Japan is an archipelago of over 14,000 islands, resting precariously on the edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire. It is a fractured landmass that absorbs 20% of the world's most powerful earthquakes. Beneath its soil, 111 active volcanoes continue to breathe and shift. Yet atop this incredibly volatile crust, over 125 million people carry on with an extraordinary sense of calm. Today, you and I will embark on a 3,000-kilometer journey across 27 distinct coordinates. We will traverse from the sub-zero blizzards of the extreme north to the typhoon-swept coral islands of the deep south. You are exploring with Core Travel. We begin our observation in the northern frontier of Hokkaido. Here, the winter stretches endlessly, burying the landscape under meters of relentless snow. The temperature frequently plummets to -20 degrees Celsius before dawn. In the deep silence of the morning, the only sound is the sharp cracking of ice as timber houses contract in the freezing air. Residents wake up in absolute darkness. Their first task of the day is not to eat, but to survive the snow buildup. Using wide plastic shovels, they meticulously carve pathways through walls of white powder just to reach the main road. If left unplowed, the sheer weight of the accumulating snow could easily crush a standard roof within days. This is not an occasional storm, but a daily physical toll that lasts for months. In the city of Sapporo, the adaptation to this extreme freeze has shaped the urban infrastructure itself. To prevent the metropolis from collapsing under the freeze, heated pipes run directly beneath the asphalt of key intersections. The snow melts the moment it touches the ground, creating a constant, thin layer of rising steam in the freezing air. Despite the harshness, the people here do not merely endure the winter. They carve massive structures out of the ice blocks during the long nights, celebrating the very element that isolates them. We move further into the mountains, reaching the heavy snow country of Mount Myoko. This region receives some of the highest annual snowfalls recorded anywhere on Earth. The cedar trees bend under the immense weight of the white blankets. To navigate the deep powder, locals have traditionally relied on wooden snowshoes called kanjiki. These woven rings distribute human weight evenly across the fragile surface of the snowpack. You can see the breath of the mountain inhabitants turning into thick white vapor with every exhalation. They wrap their bodies in layers of thick woven cotton and wool to preserve core body heat. The rivers run black against the stark white terrain, moving sluggishly beneath thick crusts of ice. Every movement here requires deliberate effort and careful calculation. Food cannot be grown in this frozen soil. Instead, survival depends entirely on the preparation done months in advance during the brief summer. We step inside a traditional wooden shelter to observe this micro-life closely. The air inside is thick with the scent of burning charcoal and dried wood. In the center of the main room sits the orori, a sunken hearth that serves as the beating heart of the household. The fire here is rarely allowed to go out completely during the deep winter months. Iron kettles hang from adjustable wooden hooks, slowly boiling water to maintain crucial humidity in the dry, heated air. Around this glowing ash, families gather in silence, absorbing the radiant heat into their bones. Root vegetables and salted fish, known as shiozake, are carefully buried in the warm ashes to cook slowly overnight. Just outside the back door, a natural refrigerator known as a yukamuro is carved directly into a mound of snow. Here, the temperature remains perfectly stable at 0 degrees Celsius. Locals store potatoes, carrots, and radishes inside these snow caves. The freezing stress causes the vegetables to convert their starches into sugars, naturally enhancing their sweetness and preserving them for the long months ahead. This is not merely a cooking technique, but a profound understanding of natural chemistry born from necessity. The isolation in Mount Myoko forces generations to rely entirely on each other. Children learn to navigate the blizzards before they even learn to read. They are taught the subtle differences in snow textures, knowing which layers are prone to deadly avalanches. As the daylight fades early in the afternoon, the village falls back into a deep, meditative silence. The snow continues to fall, covering the tracks we made just hours ago. The landscape resets itself every single night. It is a powerful reminder of how small human existence is against the overwhelming forces of nature. Traveling deeper into the mountainous spine of the country, we arrive at the isolated village of Shirakawa-go. This valley sits completely cut off from the modern world when the heavy winter storms roll in. The geographical basin traps the moisture from the Sea of Japan, dumping up to 3 meters of snow onto the valley floor. To survive this crushing weight, the ancestors of this village engineered an architectural marvel known as Gasho Zukuri. Looking closely at these massive wooden structures, you will notice the roofs are steeply pitched at a 60-degree angle. They resemble two hands pressed tightly together in deep prayer. This precise angle allows the heavy snow to slide off naturally, preventing the structure from collapsing. What is truly remarkable is that not a single metal nail is used in the construction of these immense frames. Instead, thick wooden beams are bound together using tightly woven ropes made from local witch hazel trees. The wood is intentionally allowed slightly to flex and shift under the pressure of the wind and the snow. This flexibility is the key to their endurance, allowing the houses to withstand harsh blizzards and frequent earthquakes for over 300 years. Inside the massive attic spaces of these homes, the heat from the ground floor hearth slowly rises through the slatted floors. This rising smoke preserves the thatched roofs from the inside out, keeping insects away and hardening the ropes over decades. In the neighboring region of Nagano, the struggle for survival takes on a different rhythm. The Japanese macaques, known as snow monkeys, huddle together in the steaming geothermal pools to survive the freezing winds. Humans and wildlife share the same basic instinct here, seeking out the warmth rising from the Earth's volcanic veins. The people of Nagano have cultivated a deep patience, understanding that the winter cannot be rushed or conquered. They mend their tools, weave straw boots, and silently prepare for the eventual spring. The darkness of the winter nights is absolute, broken only by the faint, warm glow of paper lanterns cutting through the falling snow. Leaving the frozen valleys of the north, we descend into a very different kind of extremity. The landscape shifts from ancient cedar forests to an endless ocean of concrete, glass, and steel. We are entering the Greater Tokyo area, a hyper-megalopolis that houses nearly 40 million human beings. This is an environment where the sheer density of life creates its own massive gravitational pull. Survival here does not require fighting off blizzards, but rather navigating the crushing psychological weight of the crowd. Nowhere is this modern adaptation more visible than at the famous Shibuya crossing. When the rain falls over the city, the intersection transforms into a mesmerizing sea of transparent and black umbrellas. Every time the pedestrian lights turn green, up to 3,000 people step off the curbs simultaneously. They flood the wet asphalt from all directions in a massive, chaotic surge. The sound of thousands of leather shoes striking the pavement echoes like a heavy, rhythmic rainfall. Yet if you observe closely from above, a profound unwritten order governs this apparent chaos. There is almost no physical contact. People subtly shift their shoulders, adjusting their micro-trajectories with mathematical precision to avoid collision. It is a silent, perfectly choreographed dance of urban survival. In a span of just 2 minutes, the intersection clears entirely, resetting itself for the next wave of humanity. This rhythm continues relentlessly, day and night, forming the pulsing heartbeat of the city. When night falls over Tokyo, the city does not sleep. It simply changes its frequency. Millions of neon signs and massive digital billboards ignite, casting a synthetic, vibrant glow over the dark streets. The air carries the scent of exhaust fumes, grilled meat from small alleyway yakitori stalls, and damp concrete. Despite the overwhelming visual noise, there is an eerie quietness in the residential backstreets, just a few blocks away from the main commercial arteries. Here, the only sound is the low hum of thousands of air conditioning units, keeping the dense population comfortable. But beneath this extreme synchronization, the modern Japanese citizen actively seeks out profound isolation to recharge their mental capacity. Traveling to the neighboring prefecture of Saitama, we observe a fascinating dining ritual designed entirely around solitude. Inside a narrow, dimly lit ramen restaurant, the counter is divided into small, individual wooden booths separated by solid partitions. Diners sit alone, facing a blank wall or a hanging bamboo screen. When their bowl of steaming tonkotsu broth arrives, the server is completely hidden behind the screen, visible only from the waist down. There is no eye contact, no forced conversation, and no social obligation to smile. Out on the freezing streets, illuminated vending machines, known as jidohanbaiki, stand like lonely sentinels on every corner. A tired office worker purchases a small, heated can of black coffee, using it as a pocket warmer against the biting winter wind before drinking it. As dawn breaks over the port city of Yokohama, the daily migration of the salaryman begins in earnest. Yokohama's harbor is a marvel of maritime logistics, a chaotic ballet of massive cargo ships and automated steel cranes. The salty wind from the Pacific Ocean whips across the elevated highways, a constant reminder that the sea is always watching. Millions of workers dress in identical black or dark blue suits, stepping into the massive subterranean networks of the subway system. They board commuter trains that are packed so tightly that taking a deep breath becomes physically impossible. The silence inside these crowded train cars is absolute and remarkably heavy. Passengers close their eyes, not necessarily to sleep, but to retreat deep into their inner worlds. They must conserve their mental energy for the grueling corporate hours that lie ahead. The train glides over the tracks with a hypnotic, rhythmic hum, carrying its silent cargo through the concrete veins of the metropolis. Yet, nestled within this relentless industrial machine, deep roots of ancient spirituality anchor the people to their past. In the historic Asakusa district of Tokyo, the Sensoji Temple stands as a quiet sanctuary against a backdrop of towering modern skyscrapers. Before entering the main hall, visitors gather around a massive bronze incense burner called a jokoro. Thick gray clouds of fragrant osenko smoke billow out, filling the cold morning air with the scent of sandalwood and ancient herbs. People rhythmically wave the dense smoke over their heads, shoulders, and chests. This ancient purification ritual is believed to heal physical ailments and cleanse the spirit of the city's toxic stress. Even the most pragmatic businessmen pause here on their morning commute. They drop a few copper coins into the slotted wooden offering box. They pull the thick woven rope to ring the brass bell, clap their hands twice to awaken the gods, bow deeply and walk away. For a deeper sense of stillness, we travel further south to the coastal town of Kamakura. Here, the great Buddha, known as the Kamakura Daibutsu, sits exposed to the open, overcast sky. Cast in heavy green-tinged bronze during the 13th century, this massive statue has survived devastating typhoons, tidal waves, and massive earthquakes. Centuries ago, a massive tsunami completely washed away the grand wooden hall that once housed it, leaving only the Buddha behind. It remains anchored to the earth, its eyes half closed in eternal, peaceful meditation. The bronze surface is rough and weathered, bearing the physical scars of time and the harsh elements. A local worker, rushing to catch the morning train, stops briefly at the temple gates. He straightens his tie, presses his palms together for exactly 30 seconds, bows his head, and then merges back into the rushing current of the modern world. This fleeting moment of stillness is exactly how they endure. The concrete jungle is just another harsh environment, much like the frozen mountains of the north. And the people have simply evolved new, quiet mechanisms to survive its relentless pressure. Leaving the coastal sanctuaries behind, we move inland toward the tectonic heart of the Japanese archipelago. The dense urban grid slowly gives way to the sweeping, fertile valleys of Yamanashi Prefecture. Here, the horizon is completely dominated by a single, terrifyingly beautiful geological feature. Mount Fuji rises 3,776 meters into the sky. It is a nearly perfect, symmetrical stratovolcano, capped with brilliant white snow for most of the year. To the outside world, this mountain is a symbol of serene perfection. But to the people living in its massive shadow, it is a sleeping giant capable of unimaginable destruction. Mount Fuji is fully active, having last erupted in the year 1707, blanketing the capital in thick, choking ash. Yet, the local population has deeply intertwined their survival with this very threat. The soil in Yamanashi is known as kuroboku, a pitch-black earth born directly from ancient volcanic ash. It is exceptionally porous and rich in minerals, allowing farmers to cultivate some of the most resilient crops in the country. We observe a local farmer tending to a vineyard of native Koshu grapes. Instead of growing them close to the ground, the vines are elevated on massive wooden pergolas to protect them from the humid summer heat and the unforgiving volcanic soil composition. The farmer works in absolute silence. His rough, weathered hands prune the thick vines while the silent volcano watches from above. Every harvest here is a quiet gamble against the unpredictable forces of the Earth's crust. This duality of destruction and creation is the fundamental truth of living on the Ring of Fire. To truly understand this geothermal power, we travel higher into the nearby mountains of Hakone. As we ascend, the air grows significantly colder, but a strange, heavy odor begins to permeate the mountain wind. It is the sharp, acrid scent of sulfur dioxide. We reach Owakudani, a place which literally translates to the Great Boiling Valley. This desolate, scarred landscape was formed by a massive volcanic explosion roughly 3,000 years ago. The earth here is literally torn open, exposing the violent, boiling mechanics of the planet's interior. Thick plumes of white and yellow sulfuric steam hiss violently from deep vents in the rocky, barren ground. There is no vegetation here. The soil is far too acidic and hot for any roots to take hold. Yet, humans have found a way to extract a unique sustenance from this incredibly hostile environment. Workers dressed in heavy protective boots and thick rubber gloves carry large metal wire crates filled with ordinary raw chicken eggs. They carefully lower these heavy crates directly into the naturally boiling 80 degrees Celsius thermal pools. The iron and hydrogen sulfide in the natural spring water rapidly react with the calcium carbonate of the eggshells. When the metal crates are pulled out an hour later, the shells have turned entirely pitch black. These are the famous kuro tamago, or the black eggs of Oakudani. According to local folklore, consuming just one of these sulfur-boiled eggs will extend a person's lifespan by exactly 7 years. A traveler cracks the warm, black shell in the freezing mountain air, revealing a stark, perfectly white interior. The consumption of this egg is a literal ingestion of the volcano's raw energy. It is a symbolic triumph of human adaptation over a highly toxic terrain. Descending from the noxious fumes of the active crater, we retreat into the quiet sanctuary of a traditional ryokan inn hidden in the forests of Hakone. Here, the destructive geothermal heat is tamed and channeled into an ancient practice of physical and spiritual healing. The onsen, or natural hot spring bath, is perhaps the most profound expression of the Japanese relationship with nature. The bathing ritual begins long before one even enters the water. Inside the wooden bathhouse, the air is thick with rising steam and the deep, earthy scent of damp cypress wood. Bathers sit naked on small wooden stools, using a wooden bucket known as a hinoki oak to perform a cleansing process called kakeyu. This is the meticulous act of pouring warm water over the extremities, gradually moving toward the chest. It serves a crucial dual purpose, cleansing the body of physical dirt and acclimatizing the heart rate to the impending intense heat. Only when the body is completely clean and prepared does one slowly step into the communal stone pool. The mineral-rich water, naturally heated by magma to exactly 42 degrees Celsius, bites fiercely into the cold skin. Blood vessels immediately dilate, forcing the cardiovascular system to work harder while the muscles completely surrender their accumulated tension. There is a strict, unspoken code of silence in this shared space. Social hierarchies, corporate titles, and personal burdens are entirely dissolved the moment the clothing is removed. An elderly man sits submerged up to his neck in the steaming water. A small, damp white towel is folded neatly on top of his head to regulate his core temperature. He gazes out through a large open window at a Zen garden covered in a thin, crisp layer of evening frost. The physical contrast is absolute and deeply poetic. His body is encased in the scorching heat of the Earth's fiery core, while his eyes rest on the freezing, tranquil surface of the winter landscape. This daily immersion is not viewed as a luxury. It is a vital coping mechanism for survival. It washes away the grueling physical fatigue of the modern megalopolis and grounds the human spirit back into the raw, elemental power of the natural world. As dusk settles over the Hakone Valley, the temperature drops sharply. The ryokan staff quietly slide the heavy wooden shoji screens closed, sealing the warmth inside the tatami-matted rooms. Dinner is served not in a grand, noisy dining hall, but in the absolute privacy of the guest's own room. This traditional meal, known as kaiseki, is a masterclass in reflecting the harsh realities of the surrounding geography onto a ceramic plate. Every small dish is a precise, miniature representation of the current season and the local mountainous terrain. Foraged wild mountain vegetables, known as sanzai, remind the diner of the rugged slopes just outside the window. They possess a distinct, slightly bitter taste, acting as a natural medicine to awaken the body's digestive system in the cold weather. There is a deep reverence for the ingredients, acknowledging that taking life from this difficult volcanic soil is a rare privilege. After the meal, the low wooden table is cleared away, and thick cotton futons are rolled out directly onto the woven rush mats. Lying in the quiet darkness, one can faintly hear the distant rush of a mountain stream carving its way through the volcanic rock. The earth beneath the floorboards feels distinctly alive, possessing a slow, steady pulse. It is a humbling realization that this entire civilization is built upon a delicate crust floating over a sea of magma. They do not fight the volcano. They simply borrow its heat, respect its destructive potential, and find profound peace in the fragile space between eruptions. Moving southwest from the volatile geothermal valleys, we arrive at a city that bears the ultimate, terrifying scar of human history: Hiroshima. Here, on a sweltering morning in August of 1945, the temperature of the air instantly reached millions of degrees Celsius. A single flash of blinding light completely vaporized concrete, steel, and biological life within a massive radius. Today, standing at the edge of the Motoyasu River, we look upon the Genbaku Dome. It is the skeletal, brick and steel remains of the Industrial Promotion Hall. The twisted, melted iron framework stands completely frozen in time, looking exactly as it did in the seconds following the atomic blast. Surrounding this hollow ruin, the city of Hiroshima has relentlessly rebuilt itself into a thriving, dense modern metropolis. Glass skyscrapers and elevated highways wrap around this epicenter. But the immediate vicinity of the dome remains a quiet, heavy vacuum of memory. Inside the vast Peace Memorial Park, the air feels distinctly different. It is thick with a solemn, meditative stillness that actively silences the surrounding urban noise. Every morning, young elementary school children arrive in crisp uniforms, walking quietly in straight, disciplined lines. They carry hundreds of long strings tightly packed with brightly colored folded paper cranes, known in Japanese as orizuru. They carefully drape these delicate paper birds over the stone monuments. It is a quiet, repetitive, and deeply emotional act of transferring generational grief into an enduring prayer for peace. The greenery in this park is remarkably lush and overgrown. A few specific trees, known as hibakujumoku, managed to survive the extreme thermal radiation of the blast. They still stand today, bearing deep black burn scars and twisted barks. They are living, silent witnesses, proving that biological life will relentlessly push through the most toxic and devastated soil imaginable. Leaving the tragic concrete behind, we travel a short distance to the coast and cross the tidal waters to Miyajima Island. Here, we witness a completely different form of resilience, one engineered specifically to survive the raw power of the ocean. The Itsukushima Shrine appears to float directly on the glassy surface of the Seto Inland Sea. At high tide, the massive, vermilion-colored torii gate stands isolated in the dark water, entirely cut off from the mainland. It weighs an astonishing 60 tons and is constructed entirely from the trunks of massive, ancient camphor trees. Yet its base is not buried deep into the ocean floor or anchored with concrete. It stands entirely under its own immense weight, resting naturally on the shifting, unstable marine sands. This architectural choice is an act of profound submission to the ocean's superior strength. The ancient craftsmen knew they could never defeat the powerful, seasonal typhoons and the highly corrosive saltwater. Instead, they used complex interlocking wooden joints, entirely devoid of rigid iron nails, This brilliant technique allows the massive structure to breathe, sway, and absorb the brutal kinetic shock of the incoming waves without snapping. As the tide recedes in the late afternoon, the wet, muddy sand is fully exposed. Locals and travelers walk out to the massive base of the gate, carefully picking their way around sharp barnacles and stranded seaweed. They reach out to touch the waterlogged wooden pillars, feeling the rough texture of a structure that has engaged in a silent wrestling match with the Pacific Ocean for centuries. We move further inland, stepping back in time to the ancient preserved capital of Kyoto. Because this city largely escaped the devastating firebombing of the 20th century, its wooden soul remains completely intact. At the base of Mount Inari, a seemingly endless, winding corridor of brilliant orange wood snakes its way up the densely forested slopes. This is Fushimi Inari Taisha. Walking through these 10,000 closely packed torii gates is a deeply disorienting and hypnotic physical experience. The sunlight struggles to filter through the narrow gaps between the wooden pillars. It casts sharp, rhythmic, flickering shadows across the uneven stone path. Every single gate here has been purchased and donated by a Japanese business, forming a physical manifestation of gratitude for commercial success. It is a striking, surreal intersection where the intense anxiety of modern corporate survival meets ancient animistic worship. The climb up the mountain is physically exhausting. The air grows significantly thinner, cooler, and damp as we ascend deeper into the dark, silent cedar forest. Stone fox statues, covered in bright red cotton bibs and thick green moss, watch the traveler silently from the deep shadows. The only sounds are the rhythmic crunch of gravel under heavy boots and the occasional, sharp caw of a mountain crow echoing through the trees. On the western edge of Kyoto, the biological environment abruptly shifts from dense, rigid cedar to towering, flexible grass. We step into the Hiroshima bamboo grove. The sheer verticality of the bamboo stalks completely obliterates the sky, trapping the traveler in a deep, aquatic green twilight. When the cold wind sweeps down from the surrounding mountains, the entire forest begins to sway in perfect unison. The hollow wooden stalks knock heavily against each other. They create a hollow, haunting percussion that echoes endlessly through the dense grove. Standing perfectly still in the center of the narrow dirt path, you realize just how incredibly fragile the human body is compared to this aggressive, rapid vertical growth. The bamboo root system forms a massive, interconnected subterranean web, tightly binding the soil together. This makes the ground here remarkably resistant to the violent tremors of earthquakes. Once again, we see how biology provides the ultimate, perfect blueprint for survival on a volatile tectonic plate. Continuing our journey eastward through the ancient political heart of the country, we arrive in the city of Nara. Here, the strict boundary between human civilization and wild nature has been completely erased. Over 1,000 wild sika deer roam freely through the asphalt streets, manicured parks, and ancient temple grounds. They are not fenced in, nor are they treated as urban pests. For over 1,000 years, they have been fiercely protected and revered as sacred messengers of the Shinto gods. It is a surreal, almost impossible sight to watch a massive stag with a full rack of sharp antlers calmly waiting at a pedestrian crosswalk. He stands surrounded by rushing commuters and honking delivery trucks, entirely unbothered by the machinery of the modern world. An elderly local woman sits quietly in a small wooden stall on the corner. She sells thick stacks of dry, round rice crackers known as senbei. Visitors carefully purchase these crackers to offer them to the wild animals. Over generations, the deer have learned an astonishing, peaceful evolutionary trick to safely interact with humans. A small fawn approaches a traveler slowly, locks eyes and dips its head in a distinct, deliberate bow before receiving the food. It is a mesmerizing, silent transaction between two entirely different species. This fragile truce is brokered by deep mutual respect and centuries of forced, yet peaceful coexistence. Suddenly, the deep, massive bronze bell of the nearby Todaiji temple rings out across the valley. Its extremely low frequency vibrates heavily through the damp earth, signaling the end of the afternoon light. Hearing this ancient sound, the deer turn away from the concrete streets. They slowly begin their daily migration back toward the deep, impenetrable shadows of the primeval Kasugayama forest to sleep safely through the night. Leaving the sacred, silent forests of Nara, we plunge back into the sprawling, neon-drenched grid of the Kansai region. We arrive in Osaka, a city built on relentless commerce, heavy industry, and perpetual motion. But at its very center stands a colossal monument to feudal survival and military engineering. Osaka Castle is completely surrounded by massive, deep moats and towering stone walls. Look closely at the construction of these immense fortifications. They are built using an ancient dry stone technique called bulldozer. Some of these jagged granite megaliths weigh over 100 tons. They were transported here in the 17th century without the use of any modern machinery, pulled entirely by tens of thousands of human hands. What is truly astonishing is that absolutely no mortar, cement, or adhesive binds these massive stones together. They are simply stacked with brilliant mathematical precision, using their own immense gravity to hold the structure intact. When the earth violently shakes, as it inevitably does in this tectonically active region, the dry stone walls do not shatter. They simply flex, shift slightly, and settle back into their interlocking places, absorbing the devastating seismic shock. It is a perfect architectural metaphor for the people who live here, yielding to the overwhelming force of nature in order to survive it. Moving south from the heavy concrete infrastructure of Osaka, the land fractures into a jagged, complex coastline along the Kii Peninsula. We reach the quiet, isolated bays of Kashikojima in Mai Prefecture. Here, the ocean is not a barrier, but a harsh, cold, and unforgiving provider of sustenance. In the early gray light of morning, small wooden boats cut through the freezing, dark blue water of the Pacific. Aboard these small vessels are the Ama, the legendary female freedivers of the Japanese coast. Many of these women are well into their 70s, their skin deeply tanned and lined by decades of exposure to salt and harsh maritime winds. They do not use pressurized oxygen tanks, complex diving computers, or modern thermal suits. Dressed only in thin, white cotton garments and wearing simple glass goggles, they tie a heavy lead weight around their waists. Without a moment of hesitation, they plunge backward into the freezing ocean. They descend 10 to 20 meters straight down into the dark, silent kelp forests to manually harvest abalone, sea urchins, and natural pearls. A single dive lasts up to 2 excruciating minutes in the freezing depths. When they finally break the surface, they release a sharp, high-pitched, vibrating whistling sound as they desperately gasp for air. This unique respiratory technique is called the isobue, literally translating to the whistle of the sea. It is a haunting, beautiful noise that echoes across the empty bay, a testament to the absolute physical limits of the human lung. They slowly warm their freezing, exhausted bodies over small charcoal fires on the wooden docks, sitting in silence as they prepare for the next brutal plunge. Leaving the main islands completely behind, we fly hundreds of kilometers southwest, deep into the vast expanse of the East China Sea. We enter the subtropical Ryukyu archipelago, arriving on the remote island of Ishigaki. The climate and the atmosphere here are entirely different from the rest of the nation. The air is thick, oppressively humid, and heavy with the scent of wild hibiscus and evaporating sea salt. At Kabira Bay, the water is an impossible, vibrant shade of emerald green. It conceals massive, razor-sharp coral reefs just below the glassy surface. But this tropical paradise sits directly in the crosshairs of the world's most violent and destructive seasonal typhoons. To survive the devastating cyclonic winds that regularly sweep off the ocean, the islanders do not build towering, rigid structures. Instead, they construct low-slung, single-story wooden houses that hug the earth tightly. These homes are completely surrounded by thick, heavy walls made entirely of dead coral limestone, gathered by hand from the local beaches. These structures are known as Ishigaki, sharing the very name of the island. The sandy streets in the traditional villages are intentionally winding and extremely narrow, mathematically designed to break the fierce velocity of the incoming hurricane winds. On the red-tiled clay rooftops, small, fierce-looking ceramic statues called shisa stand guard, staring out defensively at the turbulent ocean. Further south, on the flat, exposed agricultural island of Miyakojima, there are no natural mountains to block the brutal weather systems. The vast sugarcane fields bend violently under the constant, heavy pressure of the sea breeze. They know that fighting the storm is utterly futile. Survival in the extreme south means possessing the patience to let the violence pass over you. It requires the quiet, unyielding resilience to step outside and rebuild the damaged sugarcane fields the very next morning. Our 3,000-kilometer journey across the Japanese archipelago now reaches its final observation. We have traveled from the crushing, sub-zero blizzards of Hokkaido to the typhoon-battered coral shores of the southern islands. We have walked through the hyper-dense, hyper-synchronized concrete canyons of Tokyo. We have stood in silence before the tragic, melted steel framework of Hiroshima. We have witnessed how a nation of over 125 million people exists on a fractured, highly volatile tectonic plate. They are completely surrounded by the constant, looming threats of volcanic eruptions, massive earthquakes, and devastating tsunamis. Yet, in the face of this overwhelming natural hostility, they have not succumbed to fear or despair. Instead, they have cultivated one of the most profound survival philosophies on Earth. It is the concept of Wabi Sabi. It is the deep, quiet appreciation of things that are imperfect, impermanent, and incomplete. This philosophy is physically manifested in the ancient art of kintsugi. When a ceramic bowl is dropped and shattered on the floor, it is not discarded as garbage. The broken pieces are meticulously glued back together using a special tree sap lacquer dusted with pure powdered gold. The cracks are not hidden. They are proudly illuminated. The object becomes significantly more beautiful and more valuable, precisely because it has been broken and survived. This is exactly how the Japanese people view their own land. The earthquakes, the active volcanoes, and the violent typhoons are the shattering of the bowl. The relentless rebuilding, the quiet physical endurance, and the deep respect for the natural world are the gold that binds these islands together. They understand that absolutely nothing lasts forever. The earth will eventually shake, the winter snow will eventually melt, and the ocean will eventually reclaim the sandy shore. And because everything is so incredibly fragile, every single moment of peaceful existence becomes infinitely more valuable. If this long journey has awakened a sense of stillness within you, or if you find yourself longing to explore the quiet, forgotten corners of our world, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to Core Travel and join me on our next cinematic expedition. Because the Earth is vast, and there are still so many incredible stories waiting to be